where earlier today 49-year-old Zandile Mafe appeared in court in Cape Town in connection with the fire that broke out on Sunday. Magistrate Zandile granted the state a postponement for 7 days to allow for further investigations. This is also to allow the prosecutor to clarify some charges. The man who was apprehended for entering the parliamentary precinct is facing charges of housebreaking, theft and arson, and could also be charged under the National Key Point Act. Nasipi Same joins us now from Khayelitsha. Nasipi, we understand that you are at this man's home where he lives. Can you just give us details of what you are seeing and what the neighbors have said to you?
Well, what we can say is that we are in Khayelitsha. It is where he lived and rented. From our understanding and according to the neighbors, it was from August of last year. And we do have a neighbor joining us that will be speaking to us extensively about the 49-year-old Zandile Mafe, who we know now is standing accused of 5 charges, as you mentioned: arson, theft, housebreaking, and also being found in possession of explosives, and also contravention of the National Key Point Act. And as you mentioned, those 5 counts are being investigated by the Hawks under the National Key Point Act. But to talk to us further about the 49-year-old, I'm joined by Umama Megi here, who is a neighbor who lives directly next to the house. And as you can see, the house behind her is where Mr. Mafe was renting. Mama, please tell us more about Mr. Mafe. Who was he? What did you know about him?
Andimazi, ndimbona nje uba wafakwa apha kule. And ke ebengengumuntu uthethayo, besibulisa xa sidlula apha abulise naye. Simbone ngexesha ubhisi apha, uyoneka, uyahlamba into zakhe, uyapheka. Asingeni, usihlalela yedwa. Simbone ngexesha ephuma, singamazi ke asiyazi into eqhubekayo apha. Abantu abanoyazi into eqhubeka apha ngabantu bebemfake apha. Abantu balapha bakho basezilali.
And then, Mama, do we know perhaps if he was working, he was employed, or maybe he lived with anyone in this house, as you mentioned that he had been living, or rather has been renting here since last year, August?
Kahlali nami. Ukuphangela zange andimqondi uyaphangela, kodwa ngexesha bevuka ndingamboni kutshixi, ndibone ngamaqhaku bakutshixini. So andimazi uphangela nobuphangela phi na. Ndingamazi noa eberenta ngamalini, erenta phi, ephangela phi, andimazi.
A lot of people questioning his mental state, Mama. You know, the video that was circulating on Sunday following his arrest, and also today in court. What do you make out of Utatu Mafe's mental state?
Bendike ndimbone ke ekuseni, aqale phaa utshayela, atshayele angene apha erhangeni etshayela. So ndimthathe ngoba noko inoba ikhona into engekho kakuhle apha kuyo. But ndingazange athetha naye into eqinileyo.
Other neighbors are saying that they would sometimes see him sleeping outside on top of a blanket and not inside the house. Talk to us about that.
Andizange ndimbone ke late sendivalile kuba ndoyika namaphara ndihlala nomntana pha. So bendibe ndisendivalile lo xesha andimboni. Bayambona ke abantu abadlulayo apha.
Mama, you said he's been renting at this particular house since last year, August. In the past week or in the past days, have you seen him here on this premises?
Khange ndimfumane, khange ebengekho. Ndive ngosisohlala apha. Esithi xa ndimbuza uba yebo thuna ukho ummelwane wam. Wathi yena, lo ndimbone etown, kangangoba ndide ndamkhwaza ndathi mmelwane esetown, umbone etown. Andimazi ke uba emkenini apha. Ndimbona nje kungekho mntu apha, ndibona ngekho.
Umama also said that you don't really speak much to him. We do know that he is from Mahikeng. Was there perhaps maybe a language barrier? Is he able to speak his Xhosa? And also, do you know if he has family here in the Western Cape?
Andimazi nomazi. Kwathiwa ufika kwapha kwathiwa uvela emfuleni. Andimazi. Bekusithiwa ke xa uthetha isiXhosa esininzi, uthetha isiTswana ne-Afrikaans.
Ma'am, I'm sure you've heard about the devastating news, the fire that engulfed the National Assembly, including the old assembly. And Zandile Mafe here stands accused for being responsible for that. You know, having interacted with him, even if it is just a little, do you think that he is perhaps maybe capable of something like that? Mama, you're saying that I'd like for you to expand on that.
Ngenye imini ndivuka apha kusebusika ndivuka apha kusasa ndiyaphangela washevile apha i-TV ikhala kulayitiwe wemka ephethe iglasi wemka waya phaa ibhasi zikhwelela phaa kwesasigaba wemka wotshona apha kulanda sikhwela kuyibhasi emane khwaza ke njengoba kukhwelwa ngabantu emane khwaza emane ethi nam ndiyafuna ukhwela simane sihleka olo hlobo ke egqitha emane igqitha ndibona uba mna ke ndandimjonga wayi lo mntu inoba ikhona into emphazamisileyo but ndingazange athetha naye sithethe ngolu hlobo sithetha ngalo.
Umama Umegi, they're painting a picture. Umama Umegi, they're just painting a picture for us on what she says Zandile Mafe, or rather Zandile Christian Mafe, who is now in custody for the next 7 days. We do understand that the Cape Town Magistrate Court has indeed postponed that case until the 11th of January. But we're going to step out of shot with Umama Umegi here and just ask my colleague Wade Couture to just show you the house that we are talking about, and I'll just expand more about what actually transpired in court today. We also heard from his attorney, rather, that his client vehemently, or rather rejects the claims and also the charges leveled against him by the state, that he is the one responsible for that devastating fire which we saw playing out or erupting from Parliament from Saturday all the way into last night. And basically saying, or rather his attorney saying, and in his words, saying that his client, Mr. Mafe, is being accused and being used as a scapegoat for the failures of executives, basically saying that his client was also not in possession of any stolen goods, as we do know that that is also a charge that is being investigated by the Hawks, saying that he was found in possession of a couple of items from inside Parliament. However, his attorney saying that he is not responsible for the fire, including having broken into Parliament. I mean, following this devastating fire, and the arrest of Zandile Mafe, who we know is 49 years old, has been renting at this particular house that we are showing you now from August of last year, and also having lived Kualanga, according to his attorney, for about 4 years. He has been in the Western Cape for about 6 years, and he originally comes from Mahikeng, and we do understand that, according to his lawyer, he is survived by his mother, who is currently in the northwest. And from where we are standing, his neighbors are saying that he wasn't a man of many words. However, they did pick up that he might not be, he might just be mentally challenged, or rather not of sound mind. We do understand that there is also a language barrier between him and his neighbors, as many people that do live in Khayelitsha speak the language of isiXhosa, and we heard that he wasn't able to communicate much, seeing that he's able to speak Afrikaans and also isiXhosa, from what his neighbor says. And the fact that they also mentioned that they have not seen him in this particular house for a couple of days now. One of his neighbors here in front, as we heard from Mamumeki, saying that the last time they saw him, one of the neighbors saw him in town, and he did greet to acknowledge that he does indeed indeed see the neighbor and recognizes him. So at this very moment, that is the information that we have in regards to Mr. Mafe, and also what his neighbors are saying about him. As I mentioned, the case has been postponed by the Cape Town Magistrates Court to the 11th of January, which is next week, for further investigation and to also verify the address that he has provided to authorities, that it is indeed true, which is the address right behind me, or the residency right behind me, where he's been allegedly living since August of last year. And I mean, following this case and the arrest of Mr. Mafe and his identity being known public, many people asking themselves the question of how did one particular gentleman breach the security of Parliament, as we do know that Parliament is guarded 24 hours by SAPS, including Protection Service Unit. And we do also understand that according to the Hawks, who briefed out outside Parliament briefed us outside the Cape Town Magistrate Court this morning, was that at the moment they might just be looking at Mr. Mafe for further investigation. However, they are looking at other possible suspects, and there is also a possibility that more charges could be added. And I mean, we heard from Natasha Mazone yesterday saying, looking at the pictures that she saw of Parliament being gutted, particularly the National Assembly, describing it as if an atomic bomb went off, which then explains why now a charge of Mr. Mafe being in possession of explosives has been added. And I do understand that there is a possibility that more charges could be added, but his attorney is standing firm in the fact that his client is not only innocent but will be pleading guilty, and says that he is being used as a scapegoat for the failures of the executive.
Nasipia, just before we let you go, I just want to find out from you his demeanor in court, Mr. Mafe's demeanor in court. What was that like? We do know that, of course, he was in court briefly this morning, but what was his demeanor and his body language like?
Well, I think I'll use the words of Umama Megi. She said that when I asked her about his mental state, she said that meaning he didn't really interact with people here, and they couldn't really put a finger on his mental state. Also adding that at some point they concluded that he was indeed, or rather he was not okay mentally, and that is something that we also saw in court. He came in and he took off his mask and actually did a turnaround for the media to take visuals and pictures of him. Even some media calling him to turn in the direction where our cameras were. He was literally doing as he is being told. And at some point, his attorney did ask him to put on his mask as we were about to start with the proceedings. However, we do know that from his attorney, who is Luvuyo Godla, he did say that he had an extensive talk with his client in regards to having the media present inside the courtroom and taking those visuals and proceedings. And he did say that his client, Mr. Mafe, had indicated that he has no problem with the media there, also emphasizing on the fact that Mr. Mafe will not be pleading guilty to any of the charges, including the fact that he is innocent. And we do also know that his attorney has added that Mr. Mafe, or rather when questioned about Mr. Mafe's whereabouts on Sunday morning, as we do understand, according to Parliament and law enforcement officers, he was arrested inside the precincts of Parliament. And having questioned his attorney on his client's whereabouts on Sunday, he basically said that you can take anyone and place him on the crime of the scene. What he meant by that is yet to be determined, but we can expect that matter to be heard back in, or rather go back to court on the 11th of January to hear what the state actually has and also the tangible evidence that they speak of. We do know that at this very moment the Hawks are not able to fully investigate the cause of the blaze, where it started and all those details, due to the fact that there was a flare-up yesterday, and it will require the fire and rescue services to hand over that crime scene to the Hawks once it has been declared that there are no ambers for any flare-ups, including whether or not the structure itself is indeed safe for those investigators to go in and continue with the investigations ahead of the 11th of January.
Nasipi Same, our reporter out in Khayelitsha at the home of Zandile Mafe. He's, of course, the 49-year-old that has been arrested in connection or allegedly for setting that fire, setting the National Assembly alight and causing that disastrous fire. Thank you so much for your time.